Disney is notorious for trying to maintain their clean, family-friendly image and do almost anything to protect that image, especially when a cast member is charged with molesting a girl.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to my friends over at the No New Friends podcast. Please join Chris, Mary, Scott, and Sarah as they venture into the world of adulting, and also hear from their legendary cast of characters. I've been on this show myself a few times and am a loyal listener, so please give this podcast a listen. That's the No New Friends podcast, where no topic is off limit. I'll leave a link in the description to nonewfriendspodcast.com.
Our story begins with Michael Chartrand, a 36-year-old cast member who had a part-time job at the Magic Kingdom as a character performer. He was from England and lived in Kissimmee, Florida with his sister, and in 2004 took on the role of Tigger. Tigger, Winnie the Pooh, and Piglet would meet in the Toontown Hall of Fame and was located in Toontown and was a spot for character meet and greets. It was located where Pete's Silly Slideshow is now. On February 24, 2004, a 13-year-old girl and her family visited the Magic Kingdom and made a stop at Toontown Hall of Fame where Michael Chartrand was playing Tigger. They excitedly met Tigger, but had a memorable meeting, as when they took the picture with Tigger, he fondled both women's breasts as they took the picture. The 13-year-old later claimed that he had rubbed her right breast and that he had done it 2 or 3 times. She did not know what to do at the time, and they both left the meet and greet without reacting to what had happened. The next day, the 13-year-old decided to tell her mother that she had been touched by the man in the Tigger costume. Her mother responded by telling her daughter a similar story that had happened that day. Obviously, this is a very serious crime, and the parents acted accordingly by filing a report to the Orange County Sheriff's Office. The state attorney approached Michael to ask him about the incident, but he had no recollection of the event. Michael was to write a letter to the girl apologizing, so he wrote the letter. But then Michael Chartrand was arrested in early April of 2004 on a $2,500 bond and was charged with lewd or lascivious molestation involving a child and misdemeanor battery. His defense at the time of the arrest was that he may have inadvertently touched the girls, and he added that he suffers from dyslexia, which impairs his memory. Due to the seriousness of the allegations and how popular this news got, Disney suspended Mr. Chartrand without pay after his arrest. A court case was opened and the trial would begin in August, and Mr. Chartrand was looking at up to 15 years in prison if convicted for his crimes. Prosecutor William J. offered Mr. Chartrand 1 year of probation and 50 hours of community service. He would also be banned from theme parks and undergo a psychosexual evaluation. But he rejected the offer and got prepared to present his case. Mr. Chartrand's lawyer was Jeff Kaufman, who is still in law and is based out of Orlando, but he is now a personal injury and actually owns his own business, Kaufman and Lind, whenyouneedus.com. Mr. Kaufman was more than qualified to handle this case since he used to work part-time at Disney World and actually was a friend of Tigger himself. He is also a huge comic book fan and admittedly is still a Disney fan. This case started on Monday, August 1st. Mr. J began his opening statement claiming that Mr. Kaufman's client had abused his job as a Disney character and stole the innocence of a child. This defendant, the evidence will show, knew where his paws were. He then presented 24 pictures of guests who reported that they had similar experiences with Tigger. This evidence was gathered back in April, when after news of the case broke, the sheriff's office received many more complaints. During Mr. Kaufman's opening statement, he called the case an example of sloppy police work and a family that was looking to make money off of Disney instead of having solid proof of what they accused his client of doing. He said that Mr. Chartrand will testify, and that Michael describes himself as an honorable human being. Mr. Kaufman also brought up interesting points, as he said that the girl's mother had lied to him and the prosecutor about seeking a civil lawsuit in this and had a separate case in the past. He also suggested that the investigation may be wrong about who played Tigger that day. The cross-examination of the 13-year-old then began. Mr. Kaufman asked her about why in one picture she seems unhappy, but in another she's smiling. She couldn't remember if the event had happened in between the pictures or not. She also pointed out that people can smile and not be happy. Mr. Kaufman was very attentive and pointed out to the jury that the girl switched stories many times. Mr. Kaufman had a plan. He knew he needed some big evidence to win this case, and the opposing side certainly had strong evidence. So, Jeff Kaufman decided to bring the Tigger costume into the courtroom and let the jury handle the costume to see how hard it would be for somebody to touch someone in the costume. Disney lawyers were a little apprehensive about the idea, even suggesting that Tigger be dyed black or white and have its ears removed. Now, I'm no lawyer, but something tells me that tampering with evidence in a court of law is illegal. This request was not granted. On Wednesday, August 4th, 2004, Mr. Kaufman was granted his demonstration, and at the end of the trial, he brought in the Tigger costume. Mr. Kaufman was given 15 minutes for his closing argument. When the judge gave him the 2-minute warning, that's when he started putting the costume on. He first strapped on the tail, and then put on the neck cloth, and then the head. Eventually, he had the whole costume on. After he took off the costume, he put on just the gloves to show how hard it would be to touch someone. The last testimony was Mr. Chartrand himself. He answered no when he was asked if he touched anyone inappropriately at Disney. He also talked about the letter he had to write, and kind of accused the detective of trying to get him to admit something he wouldn't do, in his own words. The time came for the jury to deliberate. All the evidence had been presented, all the people had testified, Disney's Tigger costume had been tried on. The jury deliberated for less than an hour and found Michael Chartrand not guilty of misdemeanor battery and lewd molestation. When he heard the verdict, he hugged his attorneys. He was reinstated that very week. He met with Disney entertainment officials and was given his entertainment job back. As far as I can tell, he did not portray Tigger. Believe it or not, Jeff Kaufman actually returned to working at Disney as well, since he was not a full-time lawyer yet. He says he was treated a little bit differently by fellow cast members, but he always said that he did not wear the Tigger costume for popularity. He did it to help his client. Jeff Kaufman actually did not work for Disney much longer because his services were no longer needed. A few weeks later, another character got into trouble. This time, Goofy in Animal Kingdom got in trouble for shoving 2 photographers in the chest. They thought at first it was one of their friends messing around, but when they saw Goofy take off his costume head backstage, it wasn't their friend. It was actually Michael Chartrand. The photographers immediately contacted their bosses, who contacted Disney officials, and then the sheriff's office was called. Mr. Chartrand was suspended from Disney again on August 30th indefinitely. There's not much known about this case, and it's not even known if he went to court or the outcome. Jeff Kaufman was called again to defend his client. At the time, he said, of course he was goofing around, because he was Goofy. Mr. Kaufman also noted that he knew it was going to be tough for Michael to go back to work after the case. After the initial news came out that Mr. Kaufman had been suspended, the story was kind of dropped. The last bit of information I have is that when media tried to interview Mr. Chartrand, he was not home, and his sister, who he was living with, referred all inquiries to Mr. Kaufman. She did note that the family had just taken their mother to the airport, but that's all I know. I assume that the case was dropped and that Michael Chartrand was either fired or quit, but no one really knows. Believe me, I tried my best to find out. After Mr. Chartrand's public eye disappearance, Tigger made one last mistake in 2007. In January, a 14-year-old kid and his family from New Hampshire visited the Magic Kingdom and decided to meet Tigger. The footage you're watching right now is the incident. The cast member claimed that the kid was pulling on the back of his costume and/or trying to unzip the costume. If this is true, then this is obviously dangerous to the cast member inside because they could be choked if the kid would pull too hard. Tigger then absolutely decked the kid in the face to get him to stop. The family was shocked and immediately reported the event. The family got a lawyer and prepared to file charges for the assault. The cast member was suspended. Before they could do that, in February 2007, the Florida State Attorney's Office announced that they had reviewed the incident and would not be filing charges. I assume that the cast member was reinstated since no charges were brought up, and to me, it looks like he did it in self-defense. But what do you guys think? So that is the long and kind of complicated history of the Tigger trials. I hope you enjoyed this video. I did my best to present the information as factually as possible. Some of the stuff, like I said, is not really known. So if Michael Chartrand or Jeff Kaufman is watching this right now, and if I got anything wrong, please do let me know down in the comments. Or if you guys know anything about this case, please let me know down in the comments. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, let me know by leaving a like and consider subscribing. It would make me a very happy man. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Have a magical day, everybody.